If an autonomous quadrupedal death machine was stalking you through a post-apocalyptic wasteland, what would you do? The AI singularity is finally upon us. Although, I gotta say, it's not nearly as cool looking as the one in Terminator. I guess it figures our timeline would find a way to be both boring and horrifying at the same time. Anyway, don't let the machine's unremarkable appearance fool you. They can still jack you up just as bad as any T-800 out there, maybe even worse. And if we don't find a way to stop them, humanity is pretty much done for. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the cyber dogs in Metalhead. Bella's heart is bigger than her brain. Humanity's insatiable urge to invent itself out of existence has left our entire species on the brink of extinction, and for some reason, she and her two accomplices, hosed and screwed here, think it's a good idea to leave the supposed safety of their doomsday bunker to retrieve something for her friend's terminally ill son. Now, I get I'm not exactly the most compassionate person out there, but even I could see the value in a run like this. If there were a good enough chance, we might find some kind of meds that could save the young man's life. The world is so drastically low on people right now, it makes sense to try and help the ones we can for the sake of repopulation. Problem is, they aren't after something that'll bring this dude back. They aren't even after something that'll make his passing more comfortable. No, instead, our intrepid band of survivors is out here risking life and limb looking for a goddamn teddy bear of all things. That's right, we are pitching away 3 healthy adults to find a stuffed animal for someone who's basically already dead. Not to mention the fact that we're also wasting precious fuel and a working vehicle that would be better spent finding food and supplies that could benefit the entire group, not just young sickie. I mean, even if it's just a quick detour on their way to look at the grocery store or something, that's still way too much of a risk for reasons you'll see here in a moment. At most, this is something you snag out of a bargain bin while loading up on canned goods and antibiotics. But no, apparently, we gotta find an exact replacement for the one that was lost. And that means schlepping it down to the nearest Amazon warehouse to start ripping into random packages. Which, as it turns out, is exactly what the robot overlords were expecting. Well, that was certainly surprising and all, but what the hell was it doing there? I can't imagine there's a ton of people scavenging for plush toys these days, because that would be stupid. So, you'd think Skynet would position its drones near more essential items like non-perishable food, warm clothing, medicine, and the like. Then again, if there really were some kind of omniscient AI running this mess, it would have most likely just psyoped us into all killing each other and saved itself the trouble. In that case, we're probably dealing with more of a standalone complex type situation, wherein mankind's autonomous killing machines had their IFF parameters scrambled somehow. And now they just sort of wander around aimlessly, wasting anything that moves. As for the Cyberdog specifically, I can't help but admire such a purpose-built instrument of war. Just look at that bouncing Betty Fragmine thing it deployed. At first glance, you might think it's a little underpowered, but we come to find out later on that that is by design, as each fragment contains a tiny tracking device the drone can use to home in on fleeing prey. The effect is twofold, as anyone who manages to survive the initial encounter will almost certainly retreat to their friends in search of medical attention, thereby leading the drone back to their hideout for some marshmallows and ginger ale. Still, I wouldn't call it perfect. Storing the primary armament in the foreleg forces the unit to slow down before it can fire, thereby reducing its combat effectiveness and making it an easier target for enemy resistance. A much better option would be mounting a small caliber, high capacity submachine gun turret on the dog's back to maximize firepower while improving mobility. I'm thinking something along the lines of 5.7 by 28 or 4.6 by 30 with armor-piercing ammunition to enable penetration through light cover or body armor. The robot's advanced targeting systems would make up for the rather anemic terminal performance of these cartridges by honing in on vital areas with mechanical precision, and moving the entire weapon system to the top of the chassis would allow the unit to fire from behind cover without exposing itself. And honestly, the anemic terminal performance might actually be a benefit, because we are trying to wound them so that they take us back to their hideout, and also because there's no hospital, so they'll probably eventually die from blood loss or infection. All that being said, the current design definitely gets the job done. should have just run, dude. It wouldn't have been able to chase you nearly as fast with the gun up, especially if you forced it to turn. Also, since it can only target what's directly in front of it, quickly moving to the right would have kept it from lining up a clear shot, at which point you might have been able to bonk it to death, or at the very least kick it over and buy yourself some time to escape. On second thought, I wouldn't want to get anywhere near this thing, as I'm sure the manufacturer thought to include a proper serving of high explosives to prevent capture should the unit become disabled. That's what I would have done anyway. Thankfully, Bella doesn't waste any more time mourning her friend's pointless death and tears out of the warehouse as fast as her legs will carry her. Given she was tagged and cursed by that tracking mine, it makes sense that she'd want to hop in the car and hit the gas before old Techno could give her a facelift. But what I don't understand is why her surviving friend would take off as well. The guy was outside messing with the delivery van this entire time, meaning the dog couldn't have known anyone else was around. In that case, a much better move on his part would have been to simply scrunch down out of sight and wait until Bella led it away before leaving her for dead and casually driving back to base. Serves her right for dragging him along on this unalive mission anyway. But if he just had to take off, why not drive in two different directions from the get-go? After all, there's only one dog. So unless it's capable of splitting itself apart to chase down multiple targets, it's gonna have to stay on one of them and let the other one get away. On second thought, as fast as this thing runs, I wouldn't count it out completely. Dang, dude, you could have at least tried getting out of the van once the dog got inside. If nothing else, swerving violently back and forth might have knocked it down long enough for you to find a nice cliff to point the vehicle towards before leaping out at the last second. Probably asking too much there, but still, you're guaranteed to die in that situation if you do nothing. Hence why what's-his-name's head is currently splattered across the windshield. And because everything in our modern dystopia is run by computers, now the dog has a car of its own. This, of course, is very bad news for Bella, who was having a hard enough time getting away already, although there is somewhat of a silver lining here. With her hatchback being much smaller and more agile, it'd be easier for her to slam on the brakes and whip a U-turn than the much larger cargo van, and if she's lucky, she might even be able to get the bot to roll the thing trying to keep up. Instead, she tries to play bumper cars with a much larger vehicle, which naturally results in her getting pushed right off the road, where she nearly drives off a cliff. However, just when it looks like Fido's got her right where he wants her, Bella's quick thinking sends her pursuer tumbling over the edge. What? No explosion? Where's Michael Bay when you need him? For real though, there's no way I would assume that this thing was down for the count from just a fall. And to her credit, Bella doesn't either. After removing the tracking chip from her leg, she places it in a plastic water bottle and tosses it in a nearby stream to send her tail on a wild goose chase. She then proceeds to immediately nullify what would have otherwise been a clever misdirection by calling back to base on a handheld radio. I mean, come on. As space-aged as these killbots are, they're obviously gonna come equipped with some kind of advanced signals intelligence tech. And sure enough, Bella even calls this out during her transmission, but that still doesn't stop her from blathering on across the airwaves for a solid 3 minutes straight, only to then act all shocked when she spots you-know-who galloping across the countryside right towards her location. The good news is that she at least managed to buy herself enough of a head start to scurry up a tree before Sparky could track her down. And having lost its gun hand after the fall, it seems the dog can neither climb up after her nor shoot her down. Yeah, don't get it twisted though. This is nowhere near the W that we're hoping for. After all, Bella can't exactly live up there. And the moment her feet touch the ground, that thing will be on her like Travis the Chimp. Granted, it's probably not quite as dangerous after losing its one-tap capabilities, but I still wouldn't want it anywhere near me. At the same time, I'd be worried about more of these things showing up the longer we wait. Realistically, the first thing that you would expect the dog to do after finding a target is call in reinforcements in case it becomes damaged or disabled. Dealing with one of them is bad enough. The last thing we need is 10 of them showing up and forming a pyramid so they can and blow us out of the tree. But absent any kind of actual weapon we can use to pick this thing off from a safe distance, our only real option is to sit tight until the situation changes or we come up with something clever. And luckily, Bella's got just the idea. Realizing that Dogbot's built-in solar array can't recharge it overnight, because of course it can't, Bella figures she can deplete the thing's battery by constantly interrupting its hibernation. And it turns out she's totally right. The only downside is that she has to spend the entire night hucking hard candies at a murder toaster every 15 minutes. But by sunrise, seems her plan was a total success. With the drone now unresponsive, Bella carefully descends from her perch and makes a run for it. However, I wouldn't write that clanker off completely just yet. Remember, it still managed to stay on Bella's trail even after she stopped transmitting, meaning it likely has the ability to identify and follow footprints and other disturbances made while moving across soft ground. Knowing this, I would take any essentials out of my adventure pack and drape it over the bot to prevent sunlight from reaching the panels. Sure, it's not exactly a permanent solution, and you never know when some unfortunate soul's going to stumble upon the bag and unwittingly doom themselves, but by then we should be long gone, so I'm not all that worried about it. Besides, this is probably the best chance we'll ever get to get rid of this thing, so we might as well make the most of it. As for Bella, apparently she figures there's no chance the dog will be able to find her once she breaks line of sight. I'm not exactly sure how she arrived at this conclusion given everything that's happened so far, but maybe she's feeling lucky. Whatever the case, I wouldn't stop at the first abandoned property I came across unless I was practically dying of thirst or something. After all, the Killbots almost certainly come with their own proprietary version of Google Maps they can use to find nearby homes and businesses. And with nothing else to go off of, they'll probably search the nearest ones in the off chance their missing prey is posting up inside. Then again, Bella did just spend all night sitting in a tree without any food or water, so she's probably not feeling super great right now. In that case, I guess it makes sense that she'd want to stop here, but we'll want to take some extra precautions to make sure we don't have any uninvited guests. First thing to note is that the gate on the perimeter wall is electronic, and therefore hackable with the right equipment, which I'd be willing to bet our new best friend totally has. Since we're planning on climbing over anyway, we should jam up any access points on the control panel with mud or sticks, or alternatively, we could just find a big rock and smash it to pieces. Whatever works, as long as it's inoperable. The same goes for the front door, of course. Bella was fortunate enough to be able to fish the house keys off a table in the entry room, so she doesn't have to worry about using the keypad to get in. Smash it. Then, once we're inside, we should arm ourselves with whatever we can find before slowly and methodically clearing the entire house to make sure there's nothing inside more advanced than a smartphone. Instead, Bella pretty much just walks in like she owns the place and immediately starts digging through random drawers in search of the keys to that SUV parked out front. Ultimately, she doesn't bump into anything autonomous, so I guess it all works out. And she even scores a single barrel break action 12 gauge and a couple shells after finding the original owner's remains up in one of the bedrooms. Evidently, they decided to do the robot's work for them, meaning this place is probably secure. Emphasis on the probably. Either way, I'd keep that shotgun handy in case we find out otherwise. Along with the firearm, she also found the car keys in the homeowner's pockets, meaning there's exactly zero reason to hang out here for another minute longer. Like, I get the wound on Bella's leg should be treated as soon as possible to avoid a potentially life-threatening infection, but that doesn't mean we have to do it here. If anything, we should just scoop whatever medical supplies they have lying around into our backpack and take care of it once we put a few miles between us and the bot's last known location. And wouldn't you know it, Bella wraps up her heels just in time to catch the sound of robot noises coming from the kitchen, which can only mean one thing. That's right, the Dynamo Doge is back in action, and wait, is that thing holding a kitchen knife? Jesus, that's unsettling. Well, whatever. It probably wouldn't have opted for the blade if it had anything better to use. So between our shotgun and the element of surprise, we should be able to come out on top. That said, we only have 2 shells, and without knowing for sure whether that glass housing its camera systems is bulletproof or not, it might be better to save them for when we have literally no other choice. Were I in this situation, I'd turn the shower on full blast to lure the little bastard into the bathroom, while also concealing the sounds of our own movements. Once it's inside, I'd shut the bathroom door behind it and make for the car. Only problem with this plan is that we know this thing is a lot stronger than it looks, so there's a good chance it'll be able to carve its way out through the wall or even yeet itself out through the window. All the same, if I'm gonna open up on this thing with the shotgun, I'd rather it be outside where I have room to potentially retreat in case the shot shells do not put it down. It seems Bella had this thought as well, as instead of dishing out the dose of lead, she waits until the dog closes in before ambushing it with a fresh coat of paint. Wow, that actually worked pretty well. And it's a good thing too, because that whole screw attack routine it's got going on looks very unpleasant, to say the least. Reminds me of someone twirling up their spaghetti with a fork, only instead of noodles, it's your intestines. And instead of sauce, well, you get the idea. All I can say is that it's too bad Bella didn't think to follow up by shutting it inside the room. Without the aid of its onboard cameras, it'll have a much more difficult time finding a way out. Then again, it probably won't matter too much either way, since we'll already be long gone by the time it eventually stumbles its way outside, right? Well, not so much. In true horror movie fashion, the Range Rover won't start. Oh, no wait, that's normal for them. Well, regardless, it looks like we're stuck hoofing it, but at least we don't have to worry about the Cyberdog following us very far. After all, as we saw back inside, it's totally blind, meaning as long as we can get out of earshot before it makes it outside, we should be golden. We can even crank up the car stereo to keep it distracted while we create distance. Yup, it's basically in the bag at this point. Or at least it would have been had Bella left well enough alone and focused on keeping herself alive. Instead, she decides to stick around and wait for Old Yeller to go nosing through the Range Rover so she can give it a taste of its own medicine. Except, just like I mentioned earlier, there's no guarantee that this thing will go down from a single shot to the head. And sure enough, it's still got a little bit of fight left in it. Ow! Yeah, good thing this went for the shin and not the femoral artery. Still, we're not out of the woods just yet. No way this thing was designed to just die without leaving behind some kind of parting gift. At the very least, we should drag ourselves to the other side of the SUV for a degree of protection in case it explodes. Or worse. See, told ya. Also, who in their right mind would look back when that thing started making noises? It sure as hell was not about to throw her a party. Although, in a way, I guess it kinda did. Here come the guests now. Spoiler alert, it's more Cyberdogs. And with that, Bella decides painstakingly removing each of the dozen or so tracking darts lodged in her skin is more trouble than it's worth, and sends out one last transmission before surrendering to fate. What a shame. However, looking back at the totality of this situation, I can't help but think Bella and friends were woefully unprepared from the very beginning. So before we wrap this one up, let's rewind back to life for a minute and break down how they should have approached their scav mission, given based on what we can reasonably surmise about the robots. First of all, let's talk about how the dog bots see the world. In current year, the most common type of fully autonomous killing machine is the self-driving car, which typically navigate obstacles by using a combination of LiDAR, radar, computer vision from onboard cameras, and ultrasonic sensors. Now, based on the numerous POV shots we were given throughout the pursuit, it seems the drones rely mainly on some kind of LiDAR, which is basically where the beams of infrared light are bouncing off objects in the environment to gauge their shape and distance. But we shouldn't rule out the possibility that they also use both thermal imaging and visible light cameras to navigate and identify targets. In that case, we should have come prepared with both passive and active countermeasures to such systems to help us slip away in the event that we're spotted. We'll start with camouflage, since that's probably the easiest. Traditional camouflage works by blending the contours of the human body into the environment to make it harder for the brain to readily identify what it's looking at. And for the most part, it'll work the same against a computer. Only, it'll probably have more to do with drastically changing our shapes to appear unlike anything the robot was programmed to recognize. recognize. It's not perfect by any means, but short of walking around in a giant cardboard box, something like a fully enclosed ghillie suit would aid in preventing detection by both LiDAR and visible light cameras, especially once we got into the forest. As for thermal imaging, that might even be easier to deal with. A simple space blanket is all it takes to defeat even high-end thermal cameras, so we'll want to line our ghillie suits with them to minimize the amount of heat our bodies radiate into the air. Of course, that'll make overheating more of an issue, but I'd rather be uncomfortable than unalive. Moving on to active countermeasures. The best would be some kind of high-intensity infrared spotlight we could shine directly at the Cyberdog's face to overwhelm LiDAR arrays and destroy its cameras. However, this isn't necessarily something that would be easy to come by out in the wasteland, so we'll probably have to settle for a few high-powered laser pointers. If used effectively, they'd still get the job done though, so I'd definitely consider them a viable option. And finally, it wouldn't be a Nerd Explains video if we didn't discuss firepower. After all, the best countermeasure to anything generally involves shooting it in the face, and that's clearly the case here. Now, I realize the entirety of the UK has fewer firearms in public ownership than any US state, but according to gov.uk, as of March 2022, there were 539,212 people who held a firearm and/or shotgun certificate living in England and Wales. And of course, that doesn't include those in possession of firearms illegally. Couple that with a weapon stockpile kept by armed police and military forces, and there should be more than enough to sustain the drastically diminished survivor population in their struggle against the killbots. Besides, it's not like you need a cannon to waste these things. So even if all we can get our hands on are break-action shotguns and target rifles, that should still be more than enough to dispatch the odd dog bot we find napping in old warehouses. And worst case scenario, we can always make some slam-fire shotguns and zip guns, or even improvised black powder weapons, like that one that turned up in Japan. Point is, this wasn't day one of the robot uprising, so you would expect anyone still alive to have a good understanding of what they're up against, as well as the right equipment to survive a close encounter. In the end, none of our heroes made it out alive, but had they taken our advice from the very beginning, there's a good chance Bella and the other driver could have survived. For that reason, I think Metalhead was beaten. Moral of the story: do not risk your life for stuffed animals.